All right, it is 2 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started here. My name is Elizabeth Weddle, and I am the Director of Marketing here at GoZone Wi-Fi. And joining me today, I have our CEO, Todd Myers.
Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this wonderful afternoon. Hopefully, the weather hasn't affected a bunch of people in the Midwest with all the snow and whatnot that I read about in the news.
Or if you're out in the Denver area, the bomb cyclone. Hopefully, you've steered clear of that as well. We are enjoying sunny skies here in Florida. So also on our webinar today, we have Asa Hedstrom. He is our marketing enthusiast. He's going to be moderating today. So if you have any questions, as Todd and I are bantering back and forth about Wi-Fi analytics, feel free to shoot them over. Asa will let us know and we'll answer your questions as soon as we can. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. Again, thank you all for joining us, and let's get started. Todd is going to kick things off just by a quick background on his experience in the Wi-Fi analytics space, in the IT and MSP space as well.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So just there's some people that are on the line, it looks like, that I've already talked to in the past, and you may know about my history, et cetera, but I go back quite a ways in the IT world, actually since the mid-'80s. In the Wi-Fi space, I entered that in the late 90s and early 2000s. So I've actually owned 9 companies and started 9 companies, all service provider based, whether it be technical services, IT services, managed services, or cloud services, or Wi-Fi services. I've kind of, been in that marketplace for quite a long time. But I was one of the original Wi-Fi pioneers, working with Wi-Fi since before it was called Wi-Fi and before any device even had 802.11 built into them. I was trying to evangelize Wi-Fi early on, trying to convince investors that every device would ultimately be Wi-Fi enabled, and poof, here we are a number of years later, and I'm carrying like 6 devices and whatnot that are all Wi-Fi enabled. So I was one of the first people to ever put Wi-Fi in an airport for passenger use and guest use. Ultimately, that company, we had about 38 airports that we owned the infrastructure in. Our platforms also operated the infrastructure for some major carriers like Sprint, and ultimately that infrastructure was sold to Boingo Wireless. As most of you know, Boingo is one of the companies that still has contracts with a lot of airports. Well, the foundation was built partially by some of the infrastructure that I own. So all of my businesses have been service provider focused, and to this day, with GoZone, we are a service provider, but at the same time, we work with many service providers, whether you are managed service providers, IT service providers, cloud service providers, marketing service providers, and everything. So that's kind of a bit about my background, and hopefully we'll shed some light on what we're about to talk about today.
Thanks, Todd. That is super helpful as we get into more of our content here. Looks like we're both trying to control things here, per usual. So we're just going to get right into, as Todd mentioned, I think he hit on an interesting point that GoZone, we are a service provider, but what we also are is a marketing company. So we're going to get back to that in a little bit. But we're going to start off, and I just want to ask you, Todd, a little bit about your experience. You've been in IT since '84. So traditionally, as a service provider and the IT side of things, what does that look like as you're selling into venues, into your customers? How do you build those partnerships and those relationships?
I mean, mainly what we've primarily focused in a lot of my companies in the past have focused on SMB markets, whether it be doctors' offices, lawyers' offices, retail establishments, hospitality, and whatnot. And those organizations generally don't have an internal IT person or department per se. It's usually the office manager or the accountant or the internal bookkeeper or kind of a jack of all trades person that manages the IT, within an organization. Some of the people that the service providers that we deal with today with GoZone are larger integrators, and they do work with organizations that have internal IT staff, and the managed service provider then may supplement what the IT department does. But I think the bulk of, ultimately who benefits from Wi-Fi analytics are those organizations, kind of SMB, SME, that don't necessarily have an internal IT, a full-time IT staff, and rely on our service provider customers to supplement their technology.
Yeah, so you're selling into, like you said, a general manager. It sounds like you're building relationships with kind of that front-facing person of the company. It could be an IT department in a larger enterprise. But what are some of the challenges that you face when you're working with these departments and trying to upsell and drive revenue from your existing clients?
I mean, IT service providers generally have a few different challenges, right? It could be they always have to convince the venue to upgrade their infrastructures and whatnot, and it's always an expense, right? So the discussion is always, how much is this going to cost? How much is this going to cost? We don't have the budget today. Those type of hurdles are the number one things that IT companies always have to overcome, as the cost aspect of it. And a lot of that cost has been kind of converted over to efficiencies and, hey, how does this added IT benefit, how does it benefit the company, on a bottom line? So it's bottom line focused. So it's allowing you to do just the same amount of work with less employees, which would lower the bottom line costs, or allows us to get a widget produced quicker, or some benefit to the core customer. It's all driven by the bottom line. So the biggest challenge is, how do I talk about what the return on the technology investment is as it relates to the bottom line?
I've got a good question here, and thanks, Todd. That sheds a lot of light. As a marketing director here, that sheds a lot of light into what our service providers are facing when they go into sell products that they already sell and have created, but as well as managed services such as GoZone services to their clients. We have a question from Robert here. He's wondering, what size companies are our focus today? Are we still SMB focused, sub 50 seat companies?
I mean, us as GoZone, we're focused on a channel, right? So whether it's a white label operators or resellers, and some of those companies focus on the SMBs, which is 1 to, well, I guess 3 to 20 employees. A restaurant can also have 50 or 100 employees. How big is that restaurant? So it really depends. So we really, at GoZone, really don't have a core focus on who we go after or deal with. Our platform we see as a value to any type of company, independent of the size, as long as they have brick and mortar locations. It could be a mall, it could be a stadium, it could be small restaurants, mom and pop coffee shop, funeral home, grocery store. I mean, you name it, any type organization. And some of those organizations might be owned by small groups. Some of them might be corporate owned or part of larger franchise organizations, et cetera. So I think we don't really have a core focus, per se.
So really, yeah, part of that I think is how we've designed our platforms, right? So we've designed our platforms to be able to really be flexible and work in a myriad of different situations, from the infrastructure level all the way up to the platform features that we've built as well. They really have value and integration value for companies of all sizes.
Yeah, they do, and that's part of the things that we really stressed when I started the company and we started developing the platforms, was make sure we're hardware agnostic, because we integrate with access points and gateways and equipment that is designed for the small business, sub $100 for an access point, all the way up to the large behemoths that are powering the Super Bowl, et cetera. So we can cover a gamut of different hardware. But at the same time, from a feature perspective, we really, can cover the small coffee shop to a mall to a stadium to an outdoor event, et cetera, and all kinds of different things in between, venues in between, whether they're, permanent brick and mortars or even what we call pop-ups, which are the events, and could be a fair, could be a carnival or a concert, that type thing.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. So Robert, hopefully that answered your question. And, that definitely determines a lot of the relationship that we're going to develop. Is it going to be with, or that our service providers or partners are going to develop? Is it going to be with operations or IT? Really depends on the size and scale of their business. So we've reviewed some of these challenges. Those are pretty clear. What we're talking about today is a solution that GoZone is really excited about, and something we've seen great success with a lot of our partners and even in our own business, is working cross-departmentally with different departments within your client's organization. So looking beyond the operations and IT departments in your client's organizations to build deeper and different relationships than the traditional model. So what does that really look like? Todd, I'll kind of let you speak to this screen.
Yeah, so these are really important pie charts, really. A lot of companies will focus or budget based on the percentage of revenue that is, kind of they're generating, right? So, traditionally, and all the research that we've done, 10% of an overall revenue for a company is allocated toward marketing budget, where IT budgets are about 3%. So, IT budgets are significantly smaller than marketing budgets. So the question really becomes, how from a technology standpoint, how can we tap into that 10% and help us achieve what we need to do from a technology standpoint? So as an example, with Wi-Fi 6 coming out, how can I get Wi-Fi 6? Because from a technical perspective, it's very, very, very beneficial with density, with how access points handle traffic, et cetera. How can we, as opposed to looking at replacing 50 access points with Wi-Fi 6 and looking at it as a cost, what can we do to have other departments help pay for that and offset it? So that's what we kind of look at. That's what bridging the gap is. How do we do that?
How do you bridge the gap between what's traditionally seen as an IT expense and really turn it into a business driver?
Yeah.
Right? Instead of just an added expense. With a marketing department, traditionally, we're focused on driving new business, brand awareness, product and service promotions, things like customer engagement. And that's what we're really measured against. Marketing departments are measured against their success of bringing in new customers, new leads, driving revenue from existing customers through campaigns and product launches and promotions. So the revenue is really what we're measured against. And for that reason, that's how marketing departments gain access to a larger budget. All of those things are driven by data.
Well, they are, but you have marketing departments have limited amounts of data, and they may not even know that technical data may help them accomplish what they need to do. So, when we look at analytics or Wi-Fi analytics in particular, we look, and as we talk to technical departments and tech people, they're interested in the analytics that they get, right? That's valuable to them. What's the throughput? How many people are, getting online? Are they staying online? How long are they online? What bandwidth are they using? I mean, those are important aspects from the IT department. Now, if the IT department can, kind of educate the rest of the departments and say, hey, by the way, we have additional analytics that we can offer the marketing department that may help them. Now we're tapping into that marketing budget to be able to help us offset the cost of our IT upgrades or just overall management, et cetera, of that particular equipment. So that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and it's bridging the gap between really analytics from a marketing standpoint, analytics that are usually digital or online analytics, and actually physical analytics from a location. Right now, a marketing department might have access to receipts or potentially maybe an email address collected from a POS system. But beyond that, a marketing department is really focused on online analytics, things like Google Analytics or maybe Facebook Analytics. That's what a marketing department might think they have access to today. But this partnership, it sounds like, can really bring that value. It can skyrocket that value with analytics from the physical location of where this venue is.
No, it can. I think it's important for all of our partners, and whether they're IT service providers or marketing service providers, to cross departments and educate a little bit on what data is valuable. So, as an example, even the raw information available in most enterprise level access points today can show an IT department how many devices physically attached to it in a given time period. That's valuable data, not just to the technical department, but that base data is really important to the marketing department as well. Hey, how many people are using our Wi-Fi network?
Right.
And at the same time now, the tech department can educate the marketing department. Hey, by the way, would you like to know how many of those are Apple iPhones versus Android devices? Hey, by the way, did you know that we could tell how many of them were male versus female? Oh, by the way, we can also now tie in and find out who that person is. And by the way, as they connect to the Wi-Fi, now we're able to send them messages and engage with them. A lot of marketing departments have no idea that this technology is easily available to them.
And now you've got the marketing department super excited about this new platform or product or whatever you are working on, right? Now you've got the attention of the marketing department saying, hey, I'm going to take this up the ladder. I'm going to take this to my boss. I'm going to take it to, the C-suite and try and get this approved because this is something we need and I have the budget for it.
Right, exactly. And that's what we've seen, more and more. Over the past couple of years, it's just started to escalate. I mean, initially it was restaurants that we heard that. Now we're seeing it throughout a gamut of different industries, from auto dealerships to tire shops to grocery stores to malls to everything. So we're seeing kind of and we were only seeing the tip of the iceberg. This market opportunity is so huge because this information is valuable. It's all about now educating the marketing department on what information is available from the technology that's in place, and specifically with what we're talking about is the Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So exactly. In just a minute, we're going to get into the different types of analytics that we're speaking to. Todd mentioned, what an IT person or a managed service provider might originally think of when they think of IT analytics and Wi-Fi analytics. But really quick, just to recap why we think the value is there in partnering with marketing departments. You can really bring more to the table. You bring not only your technical expertise, which is the world you live in, but you bring creativity, strategy, and you're really getting at the core of their business model by increasing stickiness and providing that business strategy assistance. You're now a really valuable person sitting at the table.
Yeah, well, yeah, and at the same time, when it comes up for contract renewal next year or whatever, you're not competing at a seat by seat level. Okay, well, I'm competing directly against competitor A, B, and C, and all of us are kind of quoting the same thing from a monitoring perspective. Your expertise becomes much more valuable, and that is not replaceable with your competition, no matter what the price is.
There's no apples to apples comparison for
No.
that type of value. So hopefully that's hitting home with some of you on the line here, and that you can see the value in that as well, and really why we see that Wi-Fi analytics is that bridge between IT and marketing. A little graphic here about what is Wi-Fi analytics, the way that GoZone speaks to Wi-Fi analytics. This term has really become a very broad term to encompass our entire market. We break it down into 3 different types of analytics. The presence analytics is what Todd was speaking to about who is in your venue at what time in your whole location, view a heat map of at what time was the traffic heaviest in specific areas. That can be throughout a large enterprise location or even a small mom and pop. It could be an entire city or community where you can view, okay, where is the traffic heaviest or in specific times, and then really that lends itself to increasing strategy, efficiencies, and things like that. There's also marketing analytics, which is going to be your demographics. You can see your new versus returning visitors, who is really in your venue. Is it more males or females? What's the age range? All of that value is huge for a marketing department. And then advertising analytics. If you're running any Wi-Fi advertising, you can find out how many impressions those ads are getting, click-through rates, and also find out demographics and affinity categories on the people who are viewing your advertisements. So a ton of value here for not only the marketing department, but really the entire business operation.
Yeah, and every venue is very different in what their needs are, which is why we've split up the analytics into 3 different groups and platforms, because it allows our customers to be flexible then depending on the type of venue. So if it's a pop-up event as an example, advertising is probably going to be very important to them, where they can help offset the temporary cost of setting up Wi-Fi for the concert goers, et cetera, by displaying an advertisement for Nike as an example. But Nike isn't going to just say, oh yeah, let me pay you that kind of money, but not give us any analytics to tell us how many people are going to see that ad or click on it or engage with that advertisement. So this, and that piece of the analytics gives that particular venue that visibility where presence analytics may give additional visibility, like you said, in a community environment, what side of the street is busier on a Friday night, that's valuable information to municipality, or the marketing information for a restaurant as an example, or retail store, to find out who their customers are, because whenever I go to Amazon, they know I'm there. They know who I am. They know how many times I've been there. The retail stores and brick and mortars don't have that advantage. So that's where marketing analytics really gives that advantage back to the brick and mortar business.
Right. It's to your point of Amazon. It's when you walk in the retail store, you want someone to know exactly what you bought last time and is that product released again, or notify you, hey, next time you're in, the product will be released, and maybe help guide you, kind of wayfinding and guide you through a specific store. So there's all kinds of real life applications. If we have some time at the end, we're going to go into those. But a quick graphic here on the market. Todd touched on that briefly. Clearly, this market is growing. We have a CAGR of 14.6% in the next 8 years here. So Todd, what have you seen as far as the market today, the market where it's come from and where it's going?
I remember back in my dial-up days when I started a dial-up internet service provider. We had just started up in like 96, I think 1996 or something like that. And we had a few stragglers in that said, what is this internet thing I hear about? What is this internet thing? And those were what we call the early adopter phase, right? And then, as 1997 and 98 hit, everybody started, going gangbusters on getting dial-up accounts, and it was hard for service providers to keep up. I kind of see the same thing here, and that we've had those few stragglers, right? There's, and depending on the venue, about 2 years ago, the stragglers were there, or again, the early adopters in the restaurant space. Last year and the end of last year, we're getting barraged with restaurant customers coming to us and our partners, requesting information about this. It's less about us or our partners going to them, right? It's the opposite direction. So I see the same thing happening this year with other types of venues. Again, whether it be grocery stores or auto or
could be healthcare.
Yeah, healthcare, stadium, right? Exactly. Yeah, any of those types of venues. It's the early adopters. So it's just going to do nothing but balloon out.
Pretty exciting space to be in.
It's fun.
Well, we've got a few use cases. We've still got a few of you, several of you on the line. So if we want to go through a couple of these, personally, I was going to share from my history. I come from the food and beverage industry and working as the director of marketing for a large winery. This was something that we didn't have available, a technology that we didn't have available in that application, and something as the director of marketing, I would have just gone crazy over. If my director of operations would have come to me with this solution, this type of analytics was not available. I had a lot of visibility into who was visiting my website, who's shopping and buying wine online. But as far as creating that profile of who's visiting my tasting room, what does that person look like? How much time do they spend there? I would be designing events and promotions, staffing efficiencies would have all been greatly improved by this. So actually, this is one of the things that drew me into GoZone, was I saw the inherent value in this specific technology, and not only from the value of it to the marketing department, but I know that our director of operations faced a lot of challenges in getting technology upgraded. We worked with the same MSP for, I think, 35 years. And it was always seen as an expense. But obviously, if we could have partnered together on something like this, I know that it would bring major value to, the food and beverage industry and to that application specifically.
Yeah, and we had one, just kind of focus a little bit on the healthcare, but we had one of our partners that focuses on doctors and lawyers, essentially. So some of their doctors, wanted to get better visibility on their patients and be able to send patients, information and health emails and whatnot. They didn't necessarily have all the email addresses for people, so it gave them one extra added mechanism to find out who their patients were and how to communicate with them for wellness updates, et cetera. And another interesting one, I really like the story of a chiropractor that was pretty ingenious. His practice happened to be literally share a wall with a fitness center. So he set up Smart Wi-Fi in his chiropractic office, and the people that were using the fitness center to connect, they had a password based Wi-Fi system. They preferred his non-password based system. They logged in, and as soon as they logged in, he was able to, talk to prospective, clients of theirs that might have pulled a muscle or whatever and wanted some chiropractic services. So, it can be used to draw the top. The idea is move the discussion from IT being a bottom line expense and find out ways to turn that technology into top line revenue generation, whether it's, again, helping marketing, which correlates directly to the top line. So that's what marketing or Wi-Fi analytics really can be, that avenue to have that discussion.
How do you see this being applied we can talk to retail a little bit, but I'd like to see how you can see this being applied on an even larger scale in a city or community.
So, we have an example like that going right now here in the community that we're in. We're able to set up a sponsor-based Wi-Fi system because the cities are really hard pressed to add any technology infrastructure in because their costs are always being attacked, right? So what we did, Wi-Fi is valuable to everybody, right? In a community, whether it's a visitor, a tourist, a local resident, it could be somebody on the lower end of the economic cycle to help bridge the digital divide. Everything we do these days is being put online. So access and easy access is extremely important to have everywhere without passwords. Just in our district alone, I think there's 45 restaurants and retail shops or something like that. That means 45 different Wi-Fi access points with 45 different SSIDs and passwords. That's a real nuisance for people to know all those things.
Especially in a tourism heavy area. We've got international travelers who don't have an LTE plan, and they're really flocking to places where they can connect to the internet.
Right, exactly. So what we did is we partnered up with the Business Improvement District. We partnered up with some key businesses kind of in the district, around the district, to put in a single access point system where it's a single network essentially, but it's multiple access points throughout the whole district. But it's seamless to the tourist or the resident that's in here. They can go from business to business to business and not know the difference. They don't have to memorize, 45 different passwords or type in 45 different passwords and 45 different SSIDs. It's a single system across the board, and that all the analytics helps the district. They can determine, all right, these are busy days. These are the busiest months. We had an uptick in 3% more people in the district this month. This year versus this month last year. A lot of valuable information. The local businesses benefit because they get access to engage with the people that are at their businesses. And then, of course, all the costs are offset by sponsors and advertisers. And that, again, that analytics is invaluable and really required. If you want to get any advertisers at all, they're going to expect how many people are looking at it, how many people are clicking and engaging with their ad. That's what they want to know in order to get the highest dollar amount of advertisement. So, we're able to deliver that with all three of our platforms for this single venue environment.
And the way we're able to do that is really part of bridging that gap. We're giving these smaller venues access to the marketing analytics, but we have to work with their operations and the infrastructure they have in place in order to bring that to fruition. So it requires a bridging of the gap, but providing them the exchange of data in return makes that implementation that much easier, because you're going in with something that has intrinsic value.
Right. It's all about educating all the different stakeholders on what the value is to them.
Awesome. Well, Todd, I have actually learned several things while we've been chatting today, and I hope that our audience has as well. If you have any final questions about our presentation, we're going to stick around here for a few minutes, and if you have any follow-up questions or are interested in learning more about Wi-Fi analytics, contact us. Here's my email address right there, as well as Wayne Newton. He is not the famous one that you're thinking of, but he is our own Wayne Newton. He's our Director of Channel Partnerships. He'd love to chat with you and tell you more about our programs.
You will say Danke Shane.
I got to see that.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone.